All right, it's Wednesday, January 4th. This is an end of the day SPY recap. And you can see here today we end up with a very neutral looking inside day. We couldn't break above the high or the low of yesterday. And we are also in the middle of a big range that's been going on for quite some time now, a few weeks. And so as I discussed early on, until we break out of this range, it could be tricky, choppy trading. I'm not in any way surprised if we have failures to go either up or down. In this case, we had both. And we're just going to have to see what develops in the days ahead. But we're getting closer to a breakout, I think, similar to this day here. Here, there was a situation we had two inside days in a row, and this was a very good day on the downside to trade, I recall. But, then the market gapped up the next day, so we never broke out of the range entirely. But the more we consolidate inside a bigger consolidation, the more likely we're getting closer to a breakout eventually. So we'll have to see what happens in the days ahead. But today, in terms of how the market traded, you can see the blue lines here represented the pre-market range. We wanted and we were kind of starting out near the top of that range, so that would have been above the halfway point of the prior day. We wanted to see if we got a nice strong green bar to start that kind of moved up to the purple line, which sets the continuity and the bigger picture to the upside, and then to see if we even take out the high of yesterday. But what happened right out of the gates, and I'm showing just the pre-market range in blue here. The first bar failed, the second bar failed to go up, and then we had kind of a downside break right here on the third bar. So you could have considered that a failure and you went short right here. And at that point, you're going short, looking for the market to kind of continue lower, take out the midpoint of yesterday, take out the close of yesterday, really get a directional movement below the pre-market lows. That's what you're looking for. And right out of the gates, it got to the pre-market lows, and then boom, it just paused. So that's okay for the moment. Then you watch another small little pause here. And by the third bar, you have 45 minutes here. You're seeing you're not breaking through the pre-market lows to get that downside range forming. And if anything, right around this point, you can sense that we were going to head up and likely, test those highs again. That's kind of the way I was interpreting it. And yeah, it was a possible small loss if you try to get short here. You waited, you were hoping, and then by an hour later, even if it wasn't going to break up, I think you should have taken a small loss because you didn't get that immediate follow through. That should have happened below the pre-market lows. Then in terms of just, the way I look at things, I think the high or low of the session normally occurs early in the session. So initially you thought this third bar might be the high of the session if we were going to continue lower, and it would have been if we really broke through the pre-market lows. Then as it came up and broke through the intraday high, at that point, you're looking at this kind of being the low of the day. The same exact bar happened to be the low of the day on the third bar. So anyway, you came up and then you had a pause. You attempted, this was another hour of just grinding up inside this big red bar, which it should have just held and continued higher. And at that point, you're not holding above the purple line, which is our continuity line. You did have a big move down for a second. You didn't really take out the low because the odds were, that's going to be the low of the day. Then you chopped around towards the end of the day. And you end up with kind of a green bar in a sense, but it's a neutral, more importantly, it's a new inside bar. So we're going to see where the pre-market range is tomorrow. We're going to do the same thing, look for breakouts up or down. It's getting to a point where I think you could, the next move, you're kind of expecting a breakout to hold at some point. So, in other words, continue. So we'll see if that happens. You got to aggressively play it, either up or down. We'll see what happens. And then if it fails, again, go the opposite way, and that'll be kind of the midpoint of this bar. That's, we'll see if we get any big gaps up or down tomorrow. That'll kind of set the whole breakout in motion, that way. But if we start sort of in the middle of the range, the failure will be either move above and then come back to the midpoint of that bar, or to start down, fail, and come back to the midpoint of that bar. So you look for that. Today, you didn't really have a midpoint, to reference. It was more just the pre-market range. And anyway, tricky day to trade. In terms of trying to get that first down move, kind of taking maybe a small loss, not really feeling comfortable that this was a strong, breakout to the upside. But if you wanted to get long, you would have gotten long somewhere in here to test that high. which it did, and then you could have broken even at some point, when it kind of came down, paused, tried the room again, then came down. So to me, it's almost like small loss, a break even kind of type of move, and then you end up with a neutral day. So let's see where we go tomorrow. Again, big picture here. Again, looking at the weekly chart. At this point, you're still red on the week. We still have a potential failure to take out the inside of last week and then come down to the midpoint of that bar. But that's going to require continued downside action. We're still a little red, but as long as we go up and get above that purple line, that's going to turn everything green. We were temporarily there today. Same thing on the monthly chart. It's kind of a key level. Are we going to start lower tomorrow, break out to the downside, get everything red, or maybe we start up? So we're getting closer to, I think, resolving that. But today, a little bit of a tricky day. And obviously, if you look at the chart, you just see a big neutral inside day inside a big range, and you'd kind of know just by definition that's always going to be a tough day to trade. So let's see what happens tomorrow.